Hi Keats fans! So I've taken another video over half term this time because over this unusually warm and balmy February 2019 I went to Rome to see where Keats spent his last few weeks before he died almost 200 years ago to the day. So this looks like a rather grim way to start, but this is an image of Keats's life mask taken by the artist Benjamin Robert Hayden. And I just wanted to say that this video is just a collection of pictures and images from my trip, and a look inside Keats's rooms overlooking the Spanish Steps, where he dies on the 23rd of February 1821. So we've left Keats in 1820, having completed the writing of the poetry we're studying, and after this he's writing the poem The Cat and Bells, and is preparing poems for his final collection of poetry, the poems of 1820, which includes Isabella and Eva St Agnes, as well as the odes, and he's optimistic about it being published before Christmas. But everything is about to change. His brother George returns briefly from America to claim some of his inheritance, which Robert Gittings says he rightfully deserves, although Keats' friends thinks he's mean and tight-fisted. But on the way back from seeing him off again, Keats coughs blood for the first time, and he does so again and has a really serious hemorrhage in June 1820. Which is the turning point in his life, and his doctor advises that he won't see another winter in England. So plans are made to send Keats to Italy. Even Shelley is contacted, and he invites Keats to Pisa, in fact, but plans are made for Rome instead, partly due to Keats's reluctance to spend time with another poet who he felt was slightly patronising. So on the 13th of September 1820, Keats boards the Mary Crowther ship with his acquaintance Joseph Severn, and they share a cabin with another consumptive patient and her companion. And it's odd that Charles Brown, who's pretty much Keats' best friend and life manager, didn't go, and one can only imagine how difficult it must have been for Fanny Brawn, who's been looking after him for the last month. And apparently Severn sees Keats write out the poem Bright Star and supposes it's a first draft, but we think that he wrote it much earlier, and probably before he even met Fanny. So before I studied Keats, I had no idea that he was literally leaving England to extend his life by a few months. I assumed it was some kind of holiday. So when I set off on our Rome trip, leaving London behind me, as you can see here, I just assumed that it was just a lovely holiday, but actually I can't imagine what it must have been like wandering around thinking I've come here to die. So while I take you through some of my holiday snaps, I'll just recount some of the details of Keats' journey. It wasn't as easy as mine. I jumped on a 2-hour flight and was delivered door to door within 5 hours. But Keats however, had to endure a 2-month voyage that didn't even begin smoothly because of bad weather, although it did mean he was able to visit Bedhampton again, the village where he wrote the Eve of St Agnes, before the ship sailed off across the water. On his birthday, on the 31st of October 1820, he arrived in Naples, but had to stay on the ship for a further 10 days because ships from England had to be quarantined. He then had to endure a journey by horse and carriage to Rome, which took a few days. So in Rome, Keats and Severn took lodgings at the Piazza di Spagna. What we're looking at right now is actually the Piazza di Navona, which is quite a big piazza. But the Piazza di Spagna is an area known as the English ghetto because of the many foreign artists living and studying there. But his whole experience is well documented in the biography, so feel free to read about it in your own time. I definitely recommend it. But when I came to Rome, I was looking forward to looking at all the buildings, all the ancient Roman structures, the fountains, in particular the fountain just outside Keats' apartment is called the Fountain of the Boat, which is by Bernini, and it's a half-sunken ship with water overflowing its sides. And from Keats's room he could hear the water overflowing, which may have inspired the words for his headstone. This picture is the Trevi Fountain, which is a really popular tourist attraction, and you can see in a minute that it's just completely mobbed. But the Fountain of the Boat is at the bottom of the Spanish Steps, another touristy place, but just slightly more peaceful than the Trevi Fountain, as you can see here. So here we are in the Piazza di Spagna, where at 26 Piazza di Spagna is the final dwelling place of John Keats, who died here in 1821. And it's called the Keats-Shelley house because it's the name of the organisation, although Shelley never visited here in Keats' lifetime, and in fact died himself only a year later and is buried in the same cemetery. And what's even more poignant is that when Shelley was found drowned, he had in his pocket a copy of Keats's 1820 poems. So that adds to the poignancy of thinking about the Romantic poets.
So we're in Keats's house, and I discovered that there are rooms devoted to commemorating Shelley's life and Byron's life, but obviously the most impressive feature of this house is the rooms where Keats died. So I'm going to take you on a little tour. This is Joseph Severn's room, and I'm told that the bookshelves have been put in later. And this is the entrance to Keats's bedroom. Look how tiny it is, but yet how lovely and bright. And as Gissing writes, he could see the fountain of Bernini, the sunken boat outside his window, and the Spanish Steps, which is now a very popular tourist spot. It's also now a very fancy shopping district, but 200 years ago apparently this was a spot where carriages would wait and be mended. And we're told that because Keats died from tuberculosis, the Vatican laws decreed that everything in the room had to be burnt after he died. So everything in here is a replica, apart from the fireplace, which is original. And it's now the 19th of February, so if we imagine it's February 1821, he would have been lying here suffering, but knowing finally that he was going to die, and he chose a spot in the non-Catholic cemetery where he wanted to be buried. And he asked for the wording on his grave to be simply, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." But his friend Charles Brown insisted on adding more elaborate wording. So almost 200 years ago, Keats died in Rome, and here is where he was buried. His inscription that he chose reads, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." But as you can see, there's a much longer inscription written on the request of his friends. Wish you could say it was a quiet, peaceful spot, but there's lots of noise from traffic beyond this wall. But we've come at a quite nice, quiet time of the day where there's hardly anyone around, and it is actually nice and peaceful. You can see some daisies on the grass that he commented upon. Not very many. But he chose this spot when he was very, very unwell. Next to him was his companion, Joseph Seven, who chose to be buried next to him, and he died in 1879, much later.